Assalamu alaikum. How are you, children? Today I am going to tell you the story about numbers. Yes, it's from this very cool book which is called Go Figure. See that? Go Figure, a totally cool book about numbers. And it really is a cool book, but obviously it's a big book. I can't possibly, make a video about the full thing, but I'll try and just read out some parts of it. So, numbers, as you know, they help us in so many ways, right? We don't just count with them, we count on them. Yes. I am sure you know what that means. We depend on them, we rely on them. So we say, I'm counting on you to help me, for example. Without numbers, we wouldn't know the time or date. We wouldn't be able to buy things, count how many things we have, or complain about how many things we don't have. So, numbers had to be invented. You agree? The story of their invention is full of, fascinating twists and turns, and it took people a long, long time to hit on the simple system that we use today. Okay? Now, numbers are everywhere, and we need them for everything. Just imagine what the world would be like if we didn't have numbers. So let's see what led led people to start counting. How did counting begin? So when people first started counting, they almost certainly used their hands. Do you still use your hands? Most people do. Since most people have 10 fingers, we can count with all our 10 fingers. So it made sense to count in tens. And this is how our modern counting system, the decimal system, began. Now, why use hands? You might ask, why use hands? Fingers gave people a handy way of counting even before they had words for numbers. Touching fingers while you count helps you keep track. Don't we do that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So, um, by holding fingers in the air, you can communicate numbers. If I want to say to you that I have 2 of something, I can do this or this for 3, and so on. The link between fingers and numbers is very ancient. Even today, we use the Latin word for fingers, which is digit. Yes, and that means number. So, what's base 10? Mathematicians say we count in base 10, which means we count in groups of 10. There's no mathematical reason why we have to count in tens. It's just an ancient, or let's say it's an accident of biology, because most people have 10 fingers. If aliens with only 8 fingers exist, they probably count in base 8. Okay, so did the cavemen count? For most of history, people actually had little need for numbers. Before farming was invented, people lived as hunter gatherers. Yes, they hunted, they gathered, they ate. So basically collecting food from the wild. Now, they gathered only what they needed and had little left over to trade or hoard, so there wasn't much point in counting things. However, they may have had a sense of time from watching the sun, the moon, and the stars. Okay, now what does this page say? can everyone count? In a few places, people still live as hunter gatherers. Most modern hunter gatherers can count, but some hardly bother. The Piraha tribe, for example, in the Amazon forests, the rainforest, they only count to two. Yes, just to two. All bigger numbers are many. In Tanzania, the Hadza tribe counts to three. Both tribes manage fine without big numbers, which they never seem to need. So, why bother? If people can live without numbers, why did we start counting? The main reason was maybe to catch cheaters. Yes, imagine that you caught 10 fish and you gave it to somebody to asking that person to carry it home for you, and that person maybe could steal some, and you'd never know because you can't count. What's worth counting? Even when people had invented counting and gotten used to the idea, they probably only counted things that seemed valuable. Some tribal people still do this. The Yapno people in Papua New Guinea count string bags, grass, skirts, animals, and money, but not days, people, sweet potatoes, or nuts. Okay? All right. So, you can actually count on people, not just metaphorically but literally. You see, let me show you a picture. Can you see this boy here? Yes, and can you see all the numbers? Okay, so uh, once again, in some parts of Papua New Guinea, tribal people start counting on a little finger and then cross the hand, arm, and body before running down the other arm. The one other tribe counts 27 body parts and uses the words for body parts as numbers. The word for 14 is nose, for instance. For numbers bigger than 27, they add one man. So 40 would be one man and right eye. Doesn't that sound unique and interesting? How, different methods people have for counting? And yet again, in Papua New Guinea, some tribes they have at least 900 different counting systems. Many tribes count past their fingers and so don't use base 10. One tribe counts toes after the fingers, giving them a base 20 system. Okay, so this is all so fascinating, so interesting. The Babylonians who lived in Iraq about 5,000 years ago counted in base 60. They gave the year 360 days, which is 6 into 60. We don't know for sure how they use their hands to count, but one theory is that they use a thumb to tap the 12 finger segments of that hand and fingers on the other hand to count lots of 12, making 60 altogether. Babylonians invented minutes and seconds, which we still count in 60s today. True? Okay. All right. So, about 6,000 years ago, the farmers in Babylonia, Iraq, started making clay tokens as records of deals. They had different shaped tokens for different things. Let me show you an example. Can you see this? Yes? And read? Okay. So, when a deal involved several tokens, they were wrapped together in a clay envelope. To show what was inside, the trader made symbols on the outside with a pointed stick. Then someone had the bright idea of simply marking clay with symbols and not bothering with tokens at all. That's how writing was invented. The first symbols were circles and cones like the old tokens, but as the Babylonians got better at sharpening their wooden pens, the symbols turned into small, sharp wedges. I can show you this diagram. This is what is meant. Okay. So, I mean, these numbers that we now know, they just didn't come out of nowhere. Everything has taken hundreds of years, thousands of years to develop. Then there were, of course, the Egyptians and the Native Americans, the Mayan tribes, and then the Indian numbers, and so on. And when you say, when you are little, and when you were little and you went to maybe the kindergarten or a nursery school, and you said, and zero means nothing, right? Zero doesn't always mean nothing. If you put a zero on the end of a number, that multiplies it by 10. That's because we use a place system in which the position of a digit tells you its value. The number 1, 2, 3, for instance, means one lot of 100, two lots of 10, and three ones. We need zero whenever there are gaps to fill. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to tell 11, say, from 101. So, between the 11, you put a 0, and that makes it 101. Okay, let me see if I can tell you a bit more about this. It's magical, isn't it? Numbers are magical. So the world's first magicians were people who could work magic with math. They could tell the date and predict the seasons not by magic, but by counting the days and watching the moon and stars. People are still fascinated by magic today. We like to imagine what it would be like to cast spells and use magical powers. Well, math can help you do truly magical things. Being a mathematician makes you a mathemagician because math is magical. In this, book, like I said, there is so much, and so fascinating that I wish I could share the entire book with you. But here again, if you can get hold of it, this is the book. Read it, learn about math, and don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of numbers. They are very helpful. Khuda Hafiz.